Alright guys, today we are going to talk about graphing sine and cosine. Okay, so let's just review. These are periodic functions, which means they repeat exactly in regular intervals. Okay, so they are exactly the same for every interval that happens. The period is the length of one cycle, and the amplitude is half the distance between the max and the min values. All right, so when we graph these, I want you to get out your unit circle. So I drew a little portion of one. Now think about our coordinate plane. Okay, so if this was our coordinate plane, that would be 0, 0. If I went over, that would be 1, 0. This is 0, 1. This is negative 1, 0. And this is 0, negative 1. I also put radians in here. So 0 radians is here. Halfway around the circle is pi. All the way around is 2 pi. Okay, half of a pi is pi over 2. And then this is 3 pi over 2. All right, so when we graph y equals sine x, all right, I need you guys to remember for these points, your x and y points, it is cosine for your x and sine for your y. So we are looking for the sine, okay, of x. So when my radians are at 0, what is my sine? So I go over here to 0. What is my sine? Remember, it's cosine for your x, sine for your y. Your sine is 0. 0. All right, well, sine at pi over 2. So I go up to pi over 2. What is my sine? It's a 1. 1. What is my sine at pi? My sine is my y. It's 0. 0. What is my sine at 3 pi over 2? Negative 1. Negative 1. What is my sine at 2 pi? It's 0 again. Okay? So imagine unrolling your circle and then laying it flat. Okay? So these are your periods. So on your graph, you are going, this is my 0, this is my pi over 2, this is my pi, this is my 3 pi over 2, and this is my 2 pi. Okay, so I just unrolled my circle. And now I'm just going to plot my points. So at 0, 0, at pi over 2, I'm at 1, at pi, I'm at 0, at 3 pi, I'm at negative 1, and at 2 pi, I'm at 0. So this is what y equals sine x looks like. You're going to do the exact same thing for cosine, but now we are looking at our x values, okay? So when cosine, what's the cosine when our radians are 0? So I go up to my circle and I say, okay, what's my x value? It's a 1. At pi over 2, what is my cosine? My x value is a 0. At pi, what is my cosine? Go to pi, my x is negative 1. Negative 1. So we're doing the exact same thing. We're making our xy chart. Okay? So at 0, I'm at 1. At pi over 2, I'm at 0. At pi, I'm at negative 1. At 3 pi over 2, I'm at 0. And 2 pi, I'm at 1. Okay? So I want to go over our first problem that we will be doing. Okay. This problem says, using f of x equals sine x or f of x equals cosine x as a guide, graph each function. Identify the amplitude and the period. Before we can do that, let's talk about graphing transformations. Okay, so here's our parent functions. We have y equals a sine b times x, okay, and y equals a times cosine b of x. A still does everything that it has been for all of our chapters that we've gone over, okay? So the absolute value of a is greater than 1, it's a stretch. If it's between 0 or 1 or a fraction, it's compressed, okay? If a is negative, it reflects across the x-axis. We've seen that over and over again. A also changes the amplitude, okay? So the number before the sine or the cosine is going to change our amplitude. Okay, when we look at B, B is going to be a horizontal stretch or a compression, and B changes the period. All right, when we look at amplitude, the absolute value of A is equal to our amplitude. And for our period, okay, our period formula is 2 pi divided by the absolute value of B. For our first question, they want us to identify amplitude and period for f of x equals 2 sine 1/2 of x. Okay, so remember, amplitude is my A, which is 2. So 2 is my amplitude. My period is going to be 2 pi over the absolute value of B. Okay, so we have 2 pi over 1/2. How do I get rid of a fraction in my denominator? I multiply both the top and the bottom by the reciprocal. So I have 2 pi times 2, which is 4 pi. So that is going to be my period. All right, so now I'm going to set up my XY chart, okay? So if my period is 4 pi, I just filled in my 0, my pi, my 2 pi, my 3 pi, my 4 pi. So I'm unrolling my unit circle. Now, we could find our points multiple ways. I did the equation way. So I have 2 sine 1/2. I want to know what happens at 0. So if I go to 0 radians, what is my sine? My sine is 0. Okay, so what is 2 times 0 is 0. So I have my point. At pi, 2 sine 1/2 of pi. Well, 1/2 of pi is just pi over 2. So if I go to pi over 2, what is my sine? It's a 1. 2 times 1 equals 2. 2 pi, do the same thing. Half of 2 pi is just pi. So if I go to pi, my sine is 0. So 2 times 0 is 0. And then we are going to plot our points. Okay? So this is what our graph will look like. So I found this point, this point, this point, this point, and this point. Now, I know 4 pi is my period. Okay? So every 4 pi, this will repeat. Now, if I found 2 pi, the only difference between a negative 2 pi is a negative sign. Well, negative 0 is still 0. Okay? If I look at pi, if I found pi to be 2, well, negative pi is going to be negative 2. If I found my 3 pi is negative 2, a negative 3 pi is going to be positive 2. Okay? So I just found these points after I plotted this side. So the amplitude says, okay, it is half the distance between the min and the max. Okay? So from here to here, I have an amplitude of 2. My period is 4 pi. So every 4 pi, it repeats itself. So they are identical. All right, good luck, guys.